Hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and TechAdvice.live video. Today I'm joined by Dr. Hendrik Witt, who's rejoining me on the program, and I wanted to say congratulations on the TeamViewer redesign.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks again for having me, and great to have the time to talk to you actually today.
Yeah, thanks for joining me again. Now, I want to ask you about the Industrial Metaverse in a sec, but can you just quickly recap the recent redesign of TeamViewer, which has sort of made the interface
Yes.
much more modernized, and it looks very streamlined, and it even has the option to click a button to go back to the old interface for those who aren't ready yet.
Correct. So for us at TeamViewer, it was really a big event. So we had the relaunch of the product that we called TeamViewer Remote. So we actually gave the baby a name. This time, because before, remember, TeamViewer was always called TeamViewer, but it not really had a distinct name. So now it is called TeamViewer Remote, and we have been launching that recently. And like you mentioned, it's a full-blown revamp of the user interface, the entire user journey and experience, way more modern, fresh, and very premium looking, actually. But not only is it good looking, it's also great in terms of functionality. We have been adding a lot more in terms of security, providing more transparency for incoming connection attempts, which is important, right? You really want to make sure that the person that takes over your computer is actually the one that should take over and not eventually somebody else. So big portion went into this. And the even better message, I would say, is it's not over. So what I mean by that is actually that was the relaunch of TeamViewer Remote. And remember, TeamViewer also has a special product for enterprise, which is called TeamViewer Tensor. And that one we will also relaunch very soon with a new and fresh look, and also some great functionalities that are obviously more geared towards large organizations and enterprises. So great things to come, but also for us, like I mentioned, a big step forward into the future. And so far, also receiving very positive feedback from customers, because now the product is just feeling more modern and more 2023. But not to forget, like you highlighted, we give people the option to go back to the old interface, like I think very common nowadays in all software out there, because some people obviously have been very long with TeamViewer, very long users. And if you bring something new, you really want to make sure you're not overwhelming the people, because the most important thing by the end of the day is that the product works for them in their day-to-day operations. And therefore you can toggle back into the new world. And we actually also do have now a full web client. So no need to install native. You can go straight on web.teamviewer.com, and then you have the same client experience like you have that with the native install. So great stuff so far happening at TeamViewer.
Yeah, I've definitely been noticing the new version and enjoying it, and every now and then I sort of click on the old interface to have a look and see, and look, it works either way, which is a wonderful thing. And I never tire of team viewing into people's computers and helping them with problems, because it makes it so much easier for me to control it rather than to have that person act as my mouse clicker and eyes and ears.
Yes.
And it's much more convenient
Yes,
for
you're
them
right.
as well. They can follow what I'm doing. So yeah, TeamViewer has grown from leaps and bounds. And of course, one of the things we spoke about nearly a year ago, almost probably to the day more or less, was the fact that you've been doing a lot of work in the Industrial Metaverse, and it's been a year since we spoke about that. And TeamViewer Frontline was the program that you have for that. How's that evolved since we last spoke?
Yeah, I mean, we, like you mentioned, we're putting a lot of focus also on TeamViewer Frontline, which is our Industrial Metaverse product line, I would say. So we have been working heads down on multiple different things. I think to call out probably something that we put a lot focus on AI-powered stuff, I would call it. For example, around image recognition and object recognition, which you can now bake into workflows. So for example, which give you verification opportunities, right? In a certain step of a workflow, it might be required to verify that the certain, let's say, scenery is what it should be. So, and then the AI, by leveraging the smart glasses camera, looks at the scene, and then in a friction of a second, it says, check, okay, that's all great. We can move on. Or it just highlights, hey, it is about to be done, but here's the thing missing. Please focus this one. So I think that is a big thing that was part of the product where we added AI capabilities, in particular for verification. And then what else has happened is we have been focusing also a lot with our customers on integrating actually our traditional classical TeamViewer products with the new Industrial Metaverse. And that, for example, now comes in a fashion that is, for example, a coffee machine maker, right? And nowadays, the big industrial coffee machines, they're all getting smart, right? So they have computers integrated, nice touch screens and everything in the coffee shops out there. And what we've been doing is we're trying to establish the link between if there is a problem in software, for example, on that coffee machine, field technicians no longer need to travel there, but they can use TeamViewer Tensor to really go into the software, remote control the software, and fix whatever needs to be fixed if the problem is in the software misconfiguration or whatsoever. Super is in line with what you are typically doing in standard IT equipment. But now, as we're talking about rather embedded devices and not classical IT equipment, sometimes, and in many cases, the problem can only be fixed by a mixture of changing something in the software, but also then changing something in hardware. But how can you do with TeamViewer traditional products a fix in hardware? You can't, because you cannot get out of the computer, literally, right? And there, TeamViewer Frontline kicks in. So we're able now to give an outside-in perspective on hardware so that eventually the people in the coffee shop, in the store, that are not a field technician, an expert or anything, we can provide them step-by-step instructions to, for example, exchange a filter, things like that. Or we can do you see what I see type of remote video calling so that the expert on the other side can actually also help by giving, verbal instruction on these type of things. And that's a beautiful piece now because you can really now see the two elements converging in the industrial metaverse, almost like in a digital twin type of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being able to see and actually see in detail and look up and look at different parts with the correct sort of headset. I mean, it's much cheaper to ship a headset out to someone's business than it is to ship a person, or it can be. And I mean, that can even be sitting there waiting for the day it's needed if it's a high enough, important enough business that they need that service immediately.
And it's so much faster, right? Think about, a coffee shop, there's the famous Starbucks and the likes. If coffee is not flowing, well, people probably go somewhere else, so they don't like it. So the most important thing is to get the thing back up and running as fast as possible, right? And that we can do with TeamViewer now, much better than before.
I know this is a sensitive topic for McDonald's, but in the US, their ice cream machines, their soft serve machines are always breaking down. And there's some sort of scandal over there where they were sort of designed to break down. I'm not asking you to comment on any of that, but I mean, they would be a wonderful place to put TeamViewer headsets because those machines are always breaking down. One of the things that we saw last year was the range of headsets, which there were Vuzix, I think, there was RealView, there was the HoloLens. So how have your partners evolved their headsets over the past year? Are we seeing yearly update cycles in the world, like as with the world of consumers, or are things a bit more stable in the industrial world due to the need for consistency and slower change?
Well, we see regular updates, I would argue, in the industry, not necessarily every year, though. So, which is also from an enterprise standpoint, not ultimately needed, I would argue, because right now the quality of the headsets out there is quote unquote good enough to run your business, run your operations. And every new version certainly comes with, additional training effort, onboarding, making people familiar. So you actually need a reasonable cadence of updates, I would argue. And that is what these players are fulfilling. That being said, obviously, everyone in the market is continuing to work on improving those smart glasses. We have been seeing recent news around Microsoft potentially pulling out of the HoloLens kind of further development of that, being still committed to the metaverse space, but eventually not necessarily with their own hardware, and more giving this to OEM partners. I think that is also what was happening in the industry. But in general, people are still on it. There is the demand. And frankly, there's also more and more players entering the hardware headset market with some special purpose hardware, let's say for healthcare or public authorities, these type of things.
Yeah, and obviously the Apple Vision Pro, which we'll talk about in a moment. But are you
Well,
finding customers are using the TeamViewer Frontline application in ways that you hadn't foreseen, or are otherwise pushing the envelope?
that's a good question. So I think the TeamViewer Frontline platform is actually designed around, let's say, standard process support, like eventually an SAP system would behave similarly, right? You come in with a blueprint of certain processes, and that's similar with TeamViewer Frontline for logistics, manufacturing, field service, inspection, these type of use cases. So I would say by design, there's limitations to go super overboard with all sorts of use cases. However, what we see is obviously more and more people adapting the technology, so it gets wider spread. In terms of an organizations, we see organizations starting with one use case, broadening out to other use cases where they can use Frontline as a platform in their organization. That is something. And the one thing where they do eventually super crazy stuff we haven't been talking and thinking about actually is probably with our what's called our Frontline Creator authoring tool, which allows you to develop step-by-step instructions on your own in AR. And there, obviously, just the limitations of Frontline Creator are your limitations. And they come up with super cool workflows. Some people, I remember, I was surprised at least, people built in an AR calculator. In AR, a calculator in AI. Why would you do this? We were never thinking about a standard component that is in calculator, but there's organizations out there that eventually need that in their processes. So this is a concrete example of what was happening in the past so far, which we never thought of would happen.
Yeah. Now, of course, last month we did see the launch of Apple's Vision Pro, a spatial computer, as they're calling it, which in the demo even saw a digital representation of a race car, similar to what we've seen with TeamViewer doing with the Microsoft HoloLens headset. Now, Vision Pro isn't out until early 2024 and only in the US to start with. So what are your thoughts on this virtual, augmented and mixed reality headset? I did read your recent post about it on LinkedIn. So can you please, also summarize that post and add anything else that you've thought of since then?
Look, I think it is a great device, right? I mean, seeing Apple finally, let's say, launching the first true hardware that is geared towards, let's say, the metaverse, augmented and virtual reality space, I think that is a big one, right? And you see how important this, let's say, computing paradigm is for Apple, right? Today, but certainly for tomorrow. It's probably replacing the iPhone at some point in the future, I would argue. So it's a super powerful device. I think they have been very smart on thinking about, because it is a virtual reality headset by design, right? It has no true see-through capabilities, but everything is done with cameras. But having iris scanners and everything, and being able to position the human eye on the front display, for example, to make it more social and acceptable, I would say, by others. I think those are very smart examples, and I can already see people sitting in airplanes and business class and whatsoever having these things, right, on and enjoying their experiences there, eventually even working there, because you can have your virtual desktops there in the airplane, even if you have no space or fairly restricted space. I think it's a great device. I think what it does with the entire market, it gives that really another push, right? Like Meta was doing with the move from naming wise from Facebook to Meta and putting this, that was a significant push to the AR market, making it more mature. I think that is a big one. We're working very closely with Apple already. trying to find ways to leverage Vision Pro for some of the use cases, for example, because it is a rather virtual reality headset and has, how I would call it, augmented video capabilities. We look at it more for stationary use cases, in particular in training or visualizing digital twins. I think it is difficult for us to deploy that straight into more on-the-go use cases like in warehouse logistics. I think that is not something where we will see it being deployed immediately. But there's, again, opportunity on the training side. So I think this is a big one. But ultimately, I think what it does is it will drive the acceptance of people on the consumer level for these type of devices, but also for these type of experiences. And I'm 100% sure it is just the beginning, right? Apple has more to tell in a couple of years from now. I'm really looking forward to 2024.
Yeah, well, I mean, there'll be the Vision Air, which will be the cheaper and lighter version. I mean, Tim Cook said this is the first Apple product that you don't look at, but you look through. And of course, you don't look through it as such. There's a whole circuit board of chips in front of you, but with those cameras, you can see through it. And I know that with some of the other headsets that sort of puts something over your eye a little bit like the original Google Glass did, and you sort of had your vision that was free and you could see things through that. So it's a different way of looking at things, but it certainly is very exciting. I mean, a lot of people thought maybe Apple would launch it in 2020 because it would have been the year of 2020 vision. Now, I think the pandemic and the fact the product wasn't ready sadly delayed that, but it's finally here, even though we still have to wait till early next year, and it's very exciting. So I look forward to seeing what TeamViewer does with it, and I'm sure it'll be a refinement of all the incredible things you're already doing in augmented reality, virtual reality, and the industrial metaverse. And I'm jealous that you'll get to play with it long before I will. So I'll have to. If you're able to tell me about it when you see it, it'll be great to talk to you about that.
Yes, absolutely, we will. Once we have it, finally, like I mentioned, we're on it, working on it in close collaboration with Apple on multiple different things, trying to find out, how can we adapt our products to that new device when it hits the market. In reality, you could say. Right now, it's on paper for most of us. But what we see and what we have been seeing through the presentation is just amazing, I would say.
Yeah, and of course the software development kit, the Beta OS is available, and the 6 different centers, of which there'll be one in Germany, which I'm sure will be very helpful for TeamViewer. Now, we only have a few minutes left, so what other advances for the industrial metaverse are on the horizon that you're already planning for, if it's not bridging any secrets to talk about it, besides beyond Apple Vision?
Well, there's obviously a lot of things which I can't really talk about today, but maybe in the near future, I would say. Yeah. No, but I think it is not a secret. Let's put it that way. Also, TeamViewer looks significantly in the artificial intelligence space, and is thinking about, how can we go even beyond what we're already doing today with AI. In general, I tend to say already augmented reality is for me AI in real time, right? Because it is leveraging all the camera stuff and applying AI technology, actually. But I think there is a way to think about AI in the metaverse context, which goes beyond image processing, right? I think we're also looking into, can generative AI help us or help our customers, these type of things. So there's a couple of things on the horizon in the AI space that we are actually working on, even across the entire product portfolio, not just in the industrial metaverse space where we truly will have something. We already have AI Studio out there that will get expanded. But we're also applying AI stuff, I would say, to not go into further details, across the entire product portfolio.
So unless there's anything else that we should know about, what is your final message to the viewers and the readers about TeamViewer in 2023 and beyond?
Well, I think in 2023 and beyond, I think if you haven't been aware that TeamViewer is no longer this, let's say, one-trick pony, can do remote support for your desktop computer or even mobile computer. I think now is the time to realize TeamViewer has gone very beyond, I would say, the classical IT support use case. We're going now straight, like I mentioned, with coffee machines, into all sorts of smart technology, embedded devices, both in the consumerish, prosumerish area, but also certainly on the industrial shop floor. And then last but not least, the combination with the industrial metaverse. So having really these things come together, I think, is a strong and very compelling value proposition for our customers. Therefore, I personally do believe it is worth looking at TeamViewer in a much broader perspective than eventually most users have been looking at TeamViewer in the past, where it was, okay, if mom and dad have a problem, TeamViewer is there to help me. Now it is, if any device breaks, TeamViewer is the tool of choice to do things. And even if I need somebody to look at it physically, TeamViewer can help me too. I think that is the big thing that people should be looking at TeamViewer in 2023 and beyond.
Well, Dr. Hendrik Witt of TeamViewer, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and talk to me about the Industrial Metaverse and Apple Vision Pro and all of the future things that TeamViewer is working on. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I do hope we can talk again in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Alex. Always a pleasure to talk to you about the latest and greatest in tech industry. So looking forward to eventually see you in person next time again.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.